Namaste Galactic Family, welcome back to my channel IndigoAngel. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit the notifications bell to continue to receive my messages. And as you can see here, I have dived into Miss Madame Helena Petrovna Blavatsky's chart. She's born August 12th, 1831 to 2:17 a.m. in Dnipro, Ukraine. And I probably just slaughtered Dnipro, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, so please forgive me for that. But I have been being continuously guided to work with beings from, it seems, almost every relative century. I just keep riding these longitudinal converging time waves into these ever-regenerating banks of information, and this is one thing that I have picked up from Nostradamus' energy signature, is that if you direct your plasma into the implosion of the empathic body of the energy encryption, that you can open their Akashic memory bank for download. So this is fundamental principle of time travel, bilocation, and even conscious lucid dreaming, where you are navigating as cold plasma. And so I've also notated this being that process of the information transfer to the universal genetic mother sun that's guiding divine destiny of humanity, as through this insurgence of particular bodies that are destined to serve within the planetary alignments. And they will shine in the darkest times beyond their greater knowing. And some are designed to feel that in their physical expression. And others, well, they'll feel it in and after their servitude in the illusional fractals of expanding geometrics, where the fabrics of space-time never ends, it just expands into the ripples of gravity, particularly in Miss Madame's case here. Now, there are groups on Earth right now that seek to stop one from their own thought and creative flows by basically labeling connections to historical literature and all previous planetary teachings to a Luciferian agenda, including Madame Blavatsky's teachings as a being who was channeling Thoth or thought, or the personification of a deceptive master throughout her literature. Okay, so my advice is that any teaching, person, or being who says that their way is the only way and all other things are fallen are simply trying to taint your own God knowing, this in turn should be the red flag. Okay, all creation and expression of source should be explored through freedom of information, and when you're through, you get to decide what's part of you and what's not. Your body was organically designed to do this, no matter where you are, at what step in your evolution of consciousness. That's why nothing can hold you in a spiritual prison your entire life. All choice is consciously and subconsciously and divinely made. Okay, so even entities or thought forms that have gained electrical spin, whatever density that's in and whatever collective you're identifying that in, whatever soul expansion, astral realm, whatever that is, they can only captivate you for short-lived periods in space-time. This is how I know her literature was her life's work. This is not a Luciferian agenda. And once you seek to understand one's path from a vision of wholeness and avoid labeling and misusing and abusing of the tree of life, see, that's all Thoth or thought seek to do, was to distort the tree of life, because he was jealous over what the spirit embodied from eating the apple, so to speak. You will come to find your own vibratory truth in all things. Do not allow any teaching on this earth to deter you away from seeking your own wisdom through the exploration of knowledge. Having that said, and I just feel that that was necessary because, you know, you were born and designed to have your own built-in bullshit detector, okay? Don't be afraid to use that on all levels. That's all I have to say here. Now, into the reading. So, she left a legacy, most definitely. You may know her work, right? Isis Unveiled, The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1 and 2, The Key to Theosophy, and several other published works. And I'm talking several other very, very important published works, okay? So she keeps showing me, when I look into her energetic field of plasma, that she wrote these works, she was under the most intense pressure that you could imagine, that she did not feel personal gain in gifting any of this to the world at the time. She was under an incredible amount of scrutiny in the later years of her works. Disgruntled missionaries with forged documents, they brought forth charges of fraud against her. And she had to endure grueling strain that ultimately broke down her health and led to chronic illness that ultimately did take her life, okay? Much like the destiny of many from Orion, which she doesn't have any Orion particularly in her chart, like any oppositions or conjunctions, but she might actually have it if we were to look at squares or like 90-degree angles. I could probably find some Orion, but it wasn't inscribed within her divine destiny. But she did very much carry a divine destiny similarly to an Orion, because many Orions don't actually get to reap the rewards of their legacy in their physical incarnation. Okay, so she didn't get to enjoy the fruits of her life's work during her physical incarnation. She very much lived and died for her life's work. What I found so incredibly enduring and inspirational is the passion she had to become undefined by any particular viewpoint of the world. Okay, so if you read her literature, she was never once afraid to make this hers and make this her interpretation from a lot of dynamic perceptions and a lot of world travel. Okay, so she married at 18 to a man who was in her 40s. This did not last long, and she left him within that year to begin traveling the world alone. So she never once worried about what would happen to her. She was driven by the deepest spiritual and thought-provoking questions about our existence. And I mean, can you imagine being 19 or 20 and just taking off to travel the world alone, to live and to desire to just simply find soul tribe and study and write? I mean, it's a very remarkable, very strong thing to do. This is a road and a path that's very less traveled. So she chose to up and travel the world, studying science, religion, theosophy. Okay, she never worried about where her money was coming from, how she was going to survive. She literally picked up and she just went on the journey of life and all-inspiring gathering of information. So she also talks about a secret book that she got to read called the Book of Dizan, which I'm not pronouncing that correctly either, Dizan, which she does fully speak of this book in The Secret Doctrine, I believe in volume 1. Yes, volume 1. So she studied all of the stanzas in this book that held all of human knowledge from thousands of rishis that came before, particularly in the Eastern prehistoric periods. What I personally feel from her interpretations of her literature is that she had a great deal of sense of humor when it came to writing about these things. Her wit was something that you seem to take note of, that she was kind of making a mockery of ignorance and patriarchal intent, much kind of like a Heiderian would, right? You can kind of catch that in between the tones of all of her literature. So pulling her chart and looking deeper into her radial soul origins here is a must for me. As it's one thing to study her literature, but for me, I immerse myself in the energetic encryption, and so I feel a calling that I must know on an energetic level. Okay, so honestly, I feel like I've been having conversations with her for the last few weeks. So this also tells me collectively that the time waves of her knowing has merged back into relativity. So if you look at her chart here, the aspect and origins that stand out the most here would be Arcturus and her moon at Libra, 9 degrees 30. Now, this is a huge placement because all her deepest psychic knowing and connection came from this internal navigational radial encryption. or celestial template within the base structures of her energetic body. This is where she manifested and materialized from. Very much a part of her subconscious guidance. And this star, this is a star of future advanced intelligence and highly angelic nature. Arcturus is a very pure star system that generates plasma and cosmic intelligence from its home supercolossal clusters in Laniakea, which holds the higher dynamic structure of Arcturus. So this may have been her driving force to bring forth such awakened material from a most unexpected source in the 19th century, right? We wouldn't have expected such incredible works to come from, well, a woman who hadn't even studied how to write, and let alone produce this incredible works. And this is another reason why I think that she became under the fire and the discrimination and the attacks of those trying to essentially accuse her of fraud, because they're thinking, how in the hell could she have written all of this, right? So I feel Miss Helena, I feel her in my voice, I feel her in my tones. And she says to me, my mother was a novelist, and I watched her write as a girl. And I knew from a young age that writing was a part of my destiny. So she's telling me that her mother was her inspiration. Her mother taught her what she needed to know. So it didn't matter. None of it mattered to her. You know, she had her own divine plan. So you can see here in her chart also, she has Hydra in her rising at Cancer 19 degrees 33. And this has been the star origin of intelligence that guided her heart to the Nagas, right? Hydra is the serpent, where I do feel that her connection to Isis, the Edens, the serpent, and the dragons was initiated. She also has Corvus in her Mercury, Virgo 914, Mars. We have, I put it in a relativity influence, Virgo 250, and then also Corvus, we have Saturn, Virgo 259. It was a part of her life mission to uphold the cup, this holy grail, okay, the holy paradise, to unveil its universal traditions. So if you dive into volume 2 of The Secret Doctrine, page 238, her in-depth account of organic fundamental astrology in a chapter called The Fifth Race and Its Divine Instructions. She talks about the serpents who redescended and taught and instructed the fifth race. And she gives the dragon Draco constellation a different light at the highest placement in the celestial bodies, wrapping around Polaris, the pole of the heavens, calling it the self-born, the alpha and the omega, winged and scaled. And she balances the serpent constellation Hydra riding up underneath the southern hemisphere of the equatorial plane in relation to the tropics and sidereal of Cancer and Capricorn. And she brings forth much serpent wisdom. It seems to be inscribed in her destiny to have interpreted the tastes of the tree of knowledge, that she actually puts in her own words. She puts the taste of the tree of knowledge, implying that she herself bit the apple, right? A metaphor for seeking eternal truth from the garden worlds, where she states serpent is woman in matter. So this lineage is clearly inscribed here in her birth chart, in her godhead, under her Hydra origin. She also has Spica at Libra, 3 degrees 32 in her Venus, you know, and this often implies that one is too smart for love, you know. So this chapter in her physical incarnation was not as necessary to explore, hence why she married and then took off. I mean, the marriage was simply just to gain freedom of individuality away from the separation of her home life with her parents. And so, but it didn't interest her. It wasn't what she knew she was destined to do. So, you know, Spikans often carry a solemn, higher path that's not rooted that much in relationship exploration, because they are very free-spirited energy signatures. Spikins are also very connected to the greater super colossal nations in Laniakea. The Spikins being a founder galactic nation of the highest angelic orders, inscribing the pathways of the garden worlds. Also, another origin I'd like to highlight here is Aquila in her Neptune, Capricorn 2255, also holds opposition to Hydra as well. So that's a very strong placement. Divine feminines with notatable placements of Aquila will be a strong feminine with great masculine tact and authority, especially if that lines up to the opposition of Hydra. Okay, they can be very temperamental and demanding, and they basically will power through with their wits to get what they need and desire. And during their younger years and honestly throughout their entire life, they will embody this more tomboyish stance and have strong friendships with the masculine, more like one of the boys, right? They won't be like a girly feminine. Also, last but not least, here we have Pegasi in her south node, Aquarius 2153. And Pegasus emerges from the neck of Andromeda. So half of this constellation is within the influential spectrum of Andromeda's origins, as if to represent a wild horse running for freedom, power, stamina. Pegasi starseeds will possess an unbridled desire for freedom because of its natural, wild, powerful spirit and galactic influence, always looking for an opportunity to break free. And honestly, I thought that I would find more Andromeda in her chart, which I do feel there is relativity of influence. And just remember that every planetary placement that I intuit, whether this is the origin or not, is up for interpretation by each individuation of astrological perspective. So this can differ from other astrologers. And, I always highly encourage that if you're looking to determine your own origins, that you do seek to receive readings from multiple astrologers and allow yourself to basically build your own collaborative idea of what resonates the most, because all of this is introspective and all of this is reflective. All of this is refractions of our interpretations of bringing things back into wholeness. Okay, so and I always want to guide too that if you're getting readings that don't resonate with you, well, then that means it's time for you to learn astrology. It is time for you to understand the mechanics of how everything works so you can start to design your own platform, because that's what all of this is about, is designing our own platform for navigation. Right, guys? So I hope you enjoyed this message today. I was really excited to deliver it. I really felt a lot of encouraging vibration coming from the energy of Helena Blavatsky. It was very much like she was just very strong in her self-empowerment. She knew who she was. She knew what she embodied, and she stood very strong in that, even through the hard times of her life. It's like she's saying, don't feel pity for me. She's seen her servitude through her reward into the kingdom of heaven. Like it was like she was granted that knowing, and she was honored in all ways, as we all will be. And yes, so namaste. I love you guys so much. I'll see you on the next video. Take care.